Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing climate change, abrupt climate change, and things related, maybe things that might be as important, maybe less important. I don't know. I think everything is important when it comes to climate change, because climate change kind of begs the question, what's wrong with humans? There's no way to really, if you want to talk about mitigating climate change, or even if you want to just talk about dealing with climate change on an emotional level, you have to start kind of getting philosophical about it, or spiritual about it, or and political about it. What the hell is wrong with us? Like, why are we doing this to ourselves, and why can't we see what we're doing and go, stop? Apparently we don't have that mechanism to stop, for whatever reason. Maybe we're insane. Maybe we're just programmed biologically or instinctually to do what it is that we do. Maybe our lizard brain is way stronger than our ideas of logic or reason or morals. I don't know. But we seem to just be trashing the place as fast as we can. With some people that, some people are doing the Willy Wonka, please stop, come back. But that seems to be all we can do on a grand scale at the moment. Some people are doing some things. Did y'all see this video about China turning a desert into a green patch of land? I'll see if I can find it. Somebody linked it. I watched it, and it was fairly amazing. It took a long time, and they planted a lot of trees. But that leads me into, I'll see if I can find it and I'll link it. That leads me into this article from The Independent. And this is from, what is the date? I really dislike when there's no date. Oh, 2 days ago. That's the date, 2 days ago. Massive restoration of world's forests would cancel out a decade of CO2 emissions, analysis suggests. A decade. Massive restoration, 1 decade. Our CO2 emissions are actually climbing at the moment, so that's a whole lot of forests. Although, it's a step in the right direction. And I have always been of the mind, or I've always had the feeling it's totally unscientific, totally like without, obviously there's lots of other things going on, global dimming and reinforcing feedback loops. But I'm of the mind and of the feeling that, like, if we actually did put on some massive brakes, and if we did, take that 50% cut in emissions, reforest 50% of what we've already clear cut, if we took those kind of steps, that we probably would see the earth respond in kind. Like, the earth wouldn't be like, what are you doing? Get off me. The planet would probably respond somewhat positively, maybe very, very positively, maybe off the charts positively. Who knows? We haven't done that yet. We're going in the other direction, because that's what we do. Replenishing the world's forests on a grand scale would suck enough carbon dioxide from the atmosphere to cancel out a decade of human emissions, according to an ambitious new study. Scientists have established there is room for an additional 1.2 trillion trillion trees to grow in parks, woods, and abandoned land across the planet. If such a goal were accomplished, ecologist Dr. Thomas Crowther said it would outstrip every other method for tackling climate change, from building wind turbines to vegetarian diets. I mean, imagine that a project on that scale. Certainly, just redirecting that energy would, you know, most likely cut some of the damage that we're doing. Lack of accurate information meant for years experts severely underestimated the number of trees on Earth. Combining data from ground-based surveys and satellites, Dr. Crowther and his colleagues arrived at a figure of 3 trillion, over 7 times more than a previous NASA estimate. The same approach, using machine learning and AI to analyze the enormous data set, allowed the researchers to predict the number of trees that could feasibly be planted in empty patches around the world. Dr. Crowther said, undervaluing trees means scientists have also been massively underestimating the potential for forests to combat climate change. Project Drawdown, a group that compares the merits of different emission-cutting techniques, currently places onshore wind power and improved recycling of fridges and air conditioners at the top of the list. Really? If rolled out on a realistic scale, each of these techniques would cut over 80 gigatons of emissions, while growing forests languishes in 15th place with a saving of just 18 gigatons. New research undertaken by Dr. Crowther has used the 1.2 billion figure to estimate the potential scale of carbon capture that could be achieved by planting trees and reveal their true potential. There's 400 gigatons now in the 3 trillion trees. And if you were to scale that up by another trillion trees, that's in the order of hundreds of gigatons captured from the atmosphere. At least 10 years of anthropogenic emissions completely wiped out, he said. While the exact figures are yet to be released, he said trees had emerged as our most powerful weapon in the fight against climate change. Dr. Crowther discussed his findings at the American Association for the Advancement of Science, or ASS, meeting in Washington, D.C. Full restoration of all sites identified as clearly unrealistic is clearly unrealistic, but tree planting is increasingly being recognized as a critical activity to preserve life on Earth. There you go, guys. Plant some trees. The United Nations initially ran a project known as the Billion Tree Campaign, but in light of Dr. Crowther's findings, this has been renamed the Trillion Tree Campaign. It has already seen 17 billion trees planted in suitable locations around the world. We are not targeting urban or agricultural areas, just degraded or abandoned lands, and it has the potential to tackle the 2 greatest challenges of our time: climate change and biodiversity loss. It's a beautiful thing because everyone can get involved. Trees literally just make people happier in urban environments. They improve air quality, water quality, food quality, ecosystem services. It's such an easy, tangible thing. Of course, there are problems with this. And I know plenty of y'all will point this out in the comment section. That trees, from the time they are planted to the time they mature, depending on how mature they are when they are planted, they need to be mature trees to be really sucking up some CO2. And that takes many years. Also, trees are dying at an unprecedented rate because of climate change. I would also, probably propose reestablishing some serious wilderness safety zones, like obviously we need to increase our wilderness parks around the planet. I'd say no-go zones, like on the par of like Chernobyl, the nuclear area, that it's like a no-go zone. For humans, obviously that was because of a disaster, but we're in the middle of a disaster. So why not declare, there's that idea of like having half the earth be wild and the other half, leave the rest of the humans. But if we started just declaring places like no-go zones, I think that would be really, really helpful. I'm sure the planet would respond in very positive ways, because even with wilderness parks and areas, we still let people go in and like run around and trample around and bring their trash and bring their tents and bring their kids and piss in the rivers and do whatever they do. We need to have places that are just like off limits, many places off limits to humans. Humans, stay your butt in the human areas and leave the wilds to the wilds. Another related, actually, this is from last Tuesday, similar message: immediate fossil fuel phase out could arrest climate change. This is another study. I forgot to tell you all, it's 36 degrees in Los Angeles right now, or in where I live outside of Los Angeles. Cold, and it's raining. Actually, the clouds and the rain are supposed to bring warmer temps, so we're not gonna see some low snow. Unfortunately, that would be kind of fun if it snowed like right here where I was sitting. That's not going to happen. Scientists say it may still technically be possible to limit warming to 1.5 C if drastic action is taken now. We keep hearing this again and again. Now. Drastic action right now. Climate change could be kept in check if a phase out of all fossil fuel infrastructure were to begin immediately, according to research. Obviously, they're not taking into account global dimming, but we'll just put that to the side. It shows that meeting the internationally agreed aspiration of keeping global warming to less than 1.5 C above pre-industrial levels is still possible. The scientists say it is therefore the choice is being made by global society, not physics, which is the obstacle to meeting the goal. The study found that if all fossil fuel infrastructure, power plants, factories, vehicles, ships, and planes from now on are replaced by zero carbon alternatives at the end of their useful lives, they are not talking about any decrease in human population. Also, there's a 64% chance of staying under 1.5 C. In October, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change said the difference between 1.5 C of warming and the earlier international target of 2 C was a significantly lower risk of drought, floods, heat waves, and poverty for hundreds of millions of people. Christopher Smith of the University of Leeds, who led the research, said, "It's good news from a geophysical point of view, but on the other side of the coin, the immediate fossil fuel phase out is really at the limit of what we could possibly do. We are basically saying we can't build anything now that emits fossil fuels. Go for it." Of course, yes, if we do that, we unleash the global dimming monster. And what would we do about that? They're totally leaving out a large component. But the study published in the Nature Communications journal, Nature Communications, used computer models to estimate by how much global temperatures would rise if fossil fuel infrastructure phase out began immediately. The lifespan for power plants was set at 40 years. So they're talking about basically not stopping building anything now, but still emitting. So, that might, maybe, possibly, could be, perhaps give us, if we're lucky, and it doesn't look like we will be, but maybe that gives us 20 years to, to get on the technology to figure out what we're going to do about the rest of everything. The lifespan for power plants was set at 40 years, cars an average of 15 years, planes for 26 years. The work also assumes a rapid end to beef and dairy consumption, which is responsible for significant global emissions. In this scenario, the model suggests carbon emissions would decline to zero over the next 4 decades, and there would be a 66% chance of the global temperature rise remaining below 1.5 C. If the phase out does not begin until 2030, the chance is 33%, or half. All right, there's a lot of problems with the science in this, but something to read. I'm going to link that below. And some scary news items. Climate change officially kills off its first mammal species. The bramble K melames doesn't look like much, but it's become the first mammal to go extinct because of human-caused climate change. Climate change is now officially sending animals extinct. Yeah, lots to debate in this as well. The bramble K melames, a rodent found on a tiny island off Australia's far north coast, and the only mammal native to the Great Barrier Reef, was this week added to a list of animals declared extinct by the Australian government. According to scientists, the mammal extinction is the first of its kind to be caused by human-induced climate change. Australia's Minister for the Environment, Melissa Price, quietly declared the extinction in a new note on threatened species released by her office on Monday and reported in the Sydney Morning Herald. While the mammal didn't get a mention in the minister's media release, it was included in a listing of species at the bottom, with the Department of Environment and Energy recommending it for a transfer from the endangered category to the extinct category. In a statement to CNET, or CNET, Minister Price said the findings were incredibly disappointing, but there was no reasonable doubt about the extinction of the species. It has been known among scientific and environmental communities for some time that the melames was likely extinct. The minister said, being confined to a single, very small and isolated location, the bramble K melames was particularly susceptible to a wide range of threats. Available evidence indicates that frequent and intense weather events during the decade 2004 to 2014 produced damaging storm surges and extremely high water levels, which were likely significant contributors. Scientists have been warning about the fate of the mammal for years, with the last known sighting recorded in 2009-2014, a survey finding no remaining trace of the species. In a 2016 research paper on the survey, scientists said climate change-induced sea level rise was one of the factors behind the extinction, concluding the rodent was the first mammal to go extinct due to human-induced climate change. I'm going to link that below, and I'm going to move on to another story. February 18th, 2019. This is from Pacific Standard. Did Christopher link this? I don't know. Maybe not. States are introducing bills that could prevent teachers from advocating for climate change. Several states have recently introduced bills that can interfere with the teaching of scientifically founded theories on climate change in public school science curricula. Oh boy, a bill in South Dakota would require each school board to adopt a code of ethics that prevents public school, elementary, and secondary school teachers from advocating for any issue that is part of a political party platform at the national, state, or what? The Arizona legislature introduced a nearly identical bill. This is not a part of a political party platform. This is science based on evidence. This is totally and completely miscategorized. Virginia legislatures proposed a bill with similar language, arguing the same. Some teachers are abusing taxpayer dollars to speak to captive audiences of students in an attempt to indoctrinate or influence students to adopt specific political and ideological positions on issues of social and political controversy. This is not there's no controversy about this, guys. There is no controversy. There is no debate. The debate is false. The debate is false. The military knows about this. Trump knows about this. He's just lying to you. There is no debate. The military has plans in place to deal with climate change, the fact of climate change, the military, the U.S. military, because they need science to actually function. They need to work on things that are scientifically true, and climate change is scientifically true. Because the military says so. They're not. The military is not. They're not talking about climate change for the money. Actually, this would cost a lot of money to take care of, but they're not doing it. This is an actual threat. In Maine, a comparable bill states that the rules must require blah, blah, blah. Science education groups. I'm not going to read any more of this because it's going to make me really, really mad. I'm just going to link it below, but that's incredible. Okay, I'm going to read a little bit of this and I'm going to move on to the last article I want to read. I'm going to read a follow-up to the James Howard Kunstler article that I read yesterday. This is the next portion of what he was talking about yesterday. So I feel like it's necessary and helpful for me to read this next portion of the article, which is a portion of the same story, to further elucidate what it is he's talking about. For decades, the climate movement has suffered. Oh, this is titled, "It's Possible to Face Climate Horrors and Still Find Hope." I may or may not read this whole thing. This is from Truth Out, and this is from today. For decades, the climate movement has suffered from a debilitating self-inflicted wound, the assumption that we can't tell the public the truth about the urgency of the crisis or the scale and the speed of the necessary solution. Many climate scientists joined forces with professional climate communicators. Am I a professional climate communicator? I wonder. I don't know. Corporate philanthropies to decree fear doesn't work as a motivator, only hope works. So let's keep things positive and promote gradualist policies like carbon pricing. This counterproductive mentality is finally changing, and author David Wallace Wells is a major part of the reason why. In July 2017, David Wallace Wells broke through the iron curtain of euphemism, optimism, and gradualism, pulled no punches, and told the truth with the publication of his article, "The Uninhabitable Earth," in New York Magazine. Wallace Wells explored some of the worst-case scenarios of climate change in detail, making the potential nightmare of civilizational collapse and total destruction of our life support system vivid and real for readers. No false optimism, only rigorous journalistic inquiry and true horror. Its publication caused an uproar amongst climate communicators. "You aren't supposed to tell the whole truth," they exclaimed. "It turns people off," and yet people were not turned off. "The Uninhabitable Earth" became the most read New York Magazine article in history and was a key inflection point for the climate movement. In his brand new book release this week, "The Uninhabitable Earth: Life After Warming," Wallace Wells has a chance to again transform and critically expand this conversation. In his book, unlike his article, Wallace Wells looks at the most likely outcomes. For example, Wallace Wells describes how even the best case scenarios for climate change will involve millions of deaths and tens or hundreds of millions of refugees. We are looking at a best case outcome: death and suffering at the scale of 25 Holocausts. The book is grim but gripping, and encyclopedic, but also narratively compelling exploration of the many ways the climate change will displace, flood, kill, starve, dehydrate, and impoverish billions while enabling the rise of climate Leviathan authoritarian governments. The facts are sobering. Humans are now adding greenhouse gases to the atmosphere 10 times faster than during the Permian mass extinction. That's scientifically what's happening, which trapped feedback loops that ended with all but a sliver of life on Earth dead. More than half of all greenhouse gas emissions ever have happened in just one generation, the past 30 years. His startling analysis is at its strongest when reckoning directly with the physical and moral climate crisis, which is just beginning to unfold and may last for millennia. We are not living in a new normal, Wallace Wells writes, but a world that will never be normal again. His work paints a chillingly clear picture of the speed and scale of the crisis and of just how bad things will get at 2 degrees, 3 degrees, 4 degrees, or more of warming. In chapters about the climate kaleidoscope, describing the distortion lens through which climate is viewed in mainstream culture, Wallace Wells also reveals himself as an incisive and insightful cultural critic. Revealing the systems that lull us into complacency, he dissects and systematically takes down countless trends towards fatalism, technological distraction, the growing obsession with individual wellness as a substitute to collective health, and conscious consumption with a keen eye. However, Wallace Wells makes an omission. perhaps because of the publication date for his new book when he declines to discuss the recent seismic shift within the climate movement. Since the publication of his article in 2017, the climate emergency movement has emerged, revealing itself as a powerful force. This movement tells the truth about the scale of the crisis and demands a real solution, be it a Green New Deal or a World War II scale climate mobilization for a 10-year transition to zero emissions plus drawdown. This new movement is led by Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the Justice Democrats in Congress, the Sunrise Movement, Zero Hour, Greta Thunberg and the school strikers, and Extinction Rebellion in the streets, and the Climate Mobilization, the organization I founded and direct, developing and pioneering new campaigns and policy approaches. Greta Thunberg, the 15-year-old pigtailed Swedish prophet, embodies the tell the truth candor of this new movement. She told the richest people in the world at Davos in January 2019, I don't want you to be hopeful. I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear I feel every day. And then I want you to act. I want you to act as you would in a crisis. I want you to act as if our house is on fire, because it is. The people at Davos know that climate change is real. It's not a debate. There's no debate. Get your dumb ass out of here with a debate. Maybe, it's unclear. The rise of the climate emergency movement, as we call it, the debate thing was something that started in think tanks and was sold to you from corporations and people that didn't want you to know how bad it was, so they can continue selling you things and destroying the planet for as long as they possibly could. And people pretty much believed it until they don't. This is a good article. Kind of want to read it to the end. I don't know if I can. Maybe I will. The rise of this climate emergency movement, as we call it at the Climate Mobilization, is proof of an operating framework that we have been advancing in our work since 2014, using truth-telling to spur sufficient action. When I brought up the omissions of these developments with Wallace Wells, he acknowledged them and said, when you write about climate, people want you to cover everything, which is a fair point. This just isn't a book about climate emergency movement. However, the omission, combined with the considerable discussion of the amoral cultish doomers who find expression as online trolls. Wow. Okay, that's interesting. Gives the book an unnecessarily gloomy outlook. Are doomers amoral and cultish? I don't know. I think there are people that realize how bad things are. They're the ones that are most in touch with the reality of climate change. Anyways. And they're not online trolls. We are not trolls. I'm not a doomer per se, but I'm in touch with the reality of climate change, and people could call this channel a doomer channel or refer to it as such. I don't know if I agree with that. Maybe they're talking about the near-term human extinction people, which, everything must die, and that's the only way it's going to ever happen. So don't ever talk about anything hopeful or even think about anything outside of the fact that we're all going to die, and it's better be really soon or else. Maybe they're talking about those people. I don't know. Obviously, it's a terrifying book. The crisis is staggering in scale. It can leave people feeling helpless and overwhelmed, which is why showing readers that there is, in fact, an organized effort to restore a safe climate at emergency speed would be very helpful to them. It would show them how they can turn their terror, grief, and guilt into meaningful action. Let us remember, it has always been individuals fighting for a cause that they viewed as more important than themselves that created every major social advancement in history. While Wallace Wells shares the commitment to the truth of the climate emergency, the commitment comes from a different place. Wallace Wells is a journalist and a scholar. He seeks and tells the truth for truth's sake. He knows it is a public good, but I'm not sure he realizes how transformative the truth can be. Perhaps he also does not view creating transformation as his responsibility. Wallace Wells sometimes finds moments of strong moral clarity, such as when he points out that the amount of suffering and death we will face has yet to be determined. The horrors of climate change are not yet scripted, he writes. We are staging them by inaction, and by action can stop them. By what action? To me, our moral obligation is fairly clear. Tell the truth, advocate for a solution that could actually restore a safe climate, and do everything we can to build power for that solution. This means putting mission over self and making some personal sacrifices. Wallace Wells isn't convinced and is ginger in providing support even to a political position he recognizes as correct. He says many of those who define themselves as practical technocrats of the environmental center left believe that what is needed to avert catastrophic climate change is a global mobilization at the scale of World War II. They are right. That is an entirely sober assessment of the size of the problem, which no more alarmist a group than the IPCC endorsed in 2018, but it is also an undertaking of ambitions so inconsistent with the present tense of politics in nearly every corner of the world that it is hard not to worry what will happen when that mobilization does not happen to the planet, yes, but also to the political commitments of those engaged with the problem. That's totally bang on. I mean, that's just reality. He's taking the reality of the situation and looking at the reality of people, what people are actually doing in the face of this news, what governments are actually doing to stop the message. They're doing everything they can to stop the message, to stop this from happening. They're shooting it down. They're shooting it with flaming arrows. Pow. Green New Deal. Boo. Those calling for mass mobilization starting today and no later, remember, they can be counted as environmental technocrats. To their left are those who see no solution short of political revolution. And that may be the only chance we have. Wallace Wells sees all of the extremely real barriers, but fails to see the electricity within the climate emergency movement. This strikes me as especially sad because with his gifts and his clear-eyed truth-telling, Wallace Wells has helped create this movement. Wallace Wells told me that he is hoping to do more work covering and promoting the movement now. Post-publication, this is a terrific development, and it has been exciting to see Wallace Wells begin to follow through on that, endorsing Extinction Rebellion and the Green New Deal. It was a missed opportunity not to cover the movement in this book, but there will be many more opportunities for him to lead. I hope very much that he takes the opportunity seriously and processes the emotional and moral implications of this intellectual juggernaut. And jumps into the fray as a climate warrior. He has taken the first step, telling the truth with breathtaking effect. So that article actually took up the rest of the time I have for this video. So I think I'm going to move the Kunstler article to tomorrow, which is fine. I'm actually going to do a video tomorrow morning. I'm doing this video a little late in the day because I was up at 5 doing other things this morning. So this is the earliest I could actually get to it. Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to talk about that a little bit, which is that I have been called a climate communicator. I would assume the position of climate communicator, that's what this channel is about. And yet I have it's very, very difficult for me to, because I have like a regular life that I'm trying to manage, and it's very difficult for me to manage that regular life and be like full on like, hey guys, climate change. Because, every time I do that, people know that climate change is real, but they also look at you like, can you hold it down, man? Can you just keep that down, man? Because you're bumming us out. Like you're bumming us out. Like it's just, screw you for bringing that up. Like people on some level are pissed because, people are always pissed when you tell the truth. That's the biggest thing. I mean, like, probably the biggest reason that people dislike me is because I tell the truth and because I'm right, and they know I'm right, and they're pissed about it. It makes them uncomfortable. Not just about climate change, but many things. And that's just, I know that's a weird thing to say, but it's just true. So when you do that, it kind of like, it's, squashes your ability to navigate in the normal world, makes it hard to navigate. So it's a big fight for me internally to like have these, I'm trying to navigate the normal world and have like a regular life because I still have to pay bills, and I still want to have a little bit of a normal life if everything's going to go south in the next year or two. I don't know if that's called hedging your bets. Maybe so. Maybe, it makes me feel all really uncomfortable inside. And then there's another part of me that feels strongly dedicated to getting this message out. And in that wanting to get the message out, there's a part of me that just wants to go full on, like, this is all we have to talk about and think about, and just really just like clear the path and just make that be, you know, what it is I'm doing with my life, and, you know, damn the consequences, or damn whatever else happens to anything else. I don't know. I don't know which way to go. Um, it's a very difficult choice. Um, and I'm sure it's difficult for other people as well. People who know what's going on, and people know what the problem is and how severe the problem is. And you know, it's like, do we talk about this, or do we actually do something about it? Are we wasting our time doing something about it? How, you know, where does it go when you really start doing something about it? But definitely, if anything is going to be done about this, if there's going to be some massive global movement, awakening, change, if there's going to be anything like that, it's going to require leaders that galvanize. It's going to require Greta Thunberg and AOC and some other, you know, some people who are willing to just go out and go like, this is what it is, you know, guys, look, you know, let it all hang out. Because that's how humans work, because humans rally behind leaders. You know, movements are made up of many moving parts and many people, but you know, and there's no really leader of the yellow vest that I can tell or I can see. That seems to be a very grassroots, people powered movement. But it's going to take people like that, people willing to really just like put it out there in really, really stark terms, and put themselves on a global, on a global stage, to really pound home the message. And it's getting bigger. I mean, it's going to be hard for people in America, for Americans to ignore this for much longer, because it's such a huge issue in other places. Even China is more in touch with climate change and what they need to do about it than America is. And eventually that wall is going to have to break. And when it does break, perhaps all hell breaks loose. That's all I have for you tonight. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the links below. Until next time, peace.